United we're as strong as a mountain. United we're as deep as the sea.
This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and we have covered in the past the issue of sexual harassment, of targeting of women within the labor movement by union officials. So this issue of sexual harassment, discrimination, predators is not a new one for WorkWeek. And joining us today is Mike Elk. He's with paydayreport.com, and he has been covering this, not just the CWA, which he is a member at, but also the SEIU, the whole issue of sexual harassment, discrimination in the labor movement. Welcome to WorkWeek, Mike.
Great to be on again.
So, Mike, why don't we talk about the latest development in Pennsylvania with the head of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO, what is happening, and the relationship that to other struggles in the labor movement and unions.
Steve, you know, what's happened in the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO is a man by the name of Frank Snyder was recently elected to be president of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. For years, Frank Snyder has been known throughout the labor movement in Pennsylvania. And I had heard some rumors as well, but nothing firsthand, had been known for making derogatory statements towards women, calling them very foul names, making very homophobic statements, and engaging in behavior that led many of these women to really leave their jobs working in the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. These women previously had filed some grievances that were ignored. This is according to reporting by Josh Idelson and Bloomberg. They had filed some grievances that were ignored, and they sent a letter to Liz Schuler, who was president of the National AFL-CIO, hoping that a woman president of the AFL-CIO would be more sympathetic. However, as we saw in the SEIU sexual misconduct scandal, where Mary Kay Henry personally ignored women, refused to meet with women who had been assaulted, and then promoted men who had done this. This isn't always the case, that women leaders are better. Big institutions are big institutions, and they're institutional politics, and those really cut both ways. This isn't something that goes either ways. So, you know, it's a big issue, and it's a big issue in the labor movement right now. And there's deeper issues here, because a lot of people are weighing in on the scandal. One of the people who helped bring it to light was a guy by the name of Rick Smith. He was a longtime Hoffa loyalist who had been part of the AFL-CIO, had been getting money from them, had also been hosting a radio show. He brought it forward, and several of the women involved said that Smith had ignored them, had refused to help out when they had been filing grievances against AFL-CIO. So that certainly raises some questions. Additionally, you know, I had reached out to Rick Smith this week to bring up my own case. You know, I revealed there was a big cover-up of sexual misconduct in the NewsGuild, going all the way up to the president of the NewsGuild. This was reporting that was backed up by the New York Times. It's been on the local CBS station here. This is very credible reporting, and Smith once again declined to cover it. I mean, this is someone taking money from unions. At the same time, Sara Nelson, who's the president of the American Flight Attendants Union, sits on the board of CWA. Nelson has called for you know, the AFL-CIO to investigate this, to have an independent investigation. And Liz Schuler, who's the president of the AFL-CIO, the National AFL-CIO, has agreed to do an independent investigation of what's happening in Pennsylvania. At the same time, you know, we've reached out to Sara Nelson and have said to Sara Nelson, you know, there ought to be an independent investigation of what happened in the NewsGuild as well. There's never been one. There was a survey done of some feelings, but there was never any independent investigation released on what occurred in terms of the cover-up. Even though we showed in documents that for 9 months, the AFL-CIO did absolutely nothing on this. So we're seeing some real questions raised here. I mean, one, Smith previously was getting money from the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO and he wasn't speaking up, and now who knows if he's still getting money. Nelson is running against Liz Schuler, so she's speaking up. And to me, this really raises a lot of questions about why we need truly independent labor journalism. You know, look, I'm all about advocacy labor journalism. I mean, you're very radical, I'm very radical in my political beliefs, but we're honest journalists. You know, we're about the truth. And I think most of the time, truth is on our side, on the left. But sometimes it's complicated. and it's complicated for institutional actors. And I think, this scandal really says a lot about, having these people speak out when they're in these political fights with the AFL-CIO, but not say anything about this other scandal happening in the nation's largest journalism union. Raises some questions, and I really hope they do the right thing and call for an independent investigation into what occurred within the NewsGuild. This is a big scandal. We're going to trial on it. We have a hearing about a dismissal case. It's very unlikely. The NewsGuild has spent over a year and tens of thousands of dollars. We don't know exactly how much because they haven't told us, but we can safely say it's well over $20,000 or $30,000 safely that they've spent defending this case. And so, there's a lot of questions here. And I think this just goes to show, look, at Amazon, we had an independent union come in and win. And Christian Smalls, who was the head of the independent union there, said, for 28 years, established unions have been trying to win at Amazon, and they couldn't. We did it in 11 months. I think, the Amazon victory, as well as some of these scandals, should really lead to some deeper questions. And we're not going to do that until we have a labor beat that is truly independent, that's funded directly by rank and file workers, not by big unions, because these big unions have political interests of their own.
And we're talking with Mike Elk. He's with paydayreport.com. And Mike, one of the things that is similar in all these cases is that the women that have been bullied, harassed, intimidated, they're fearful of speaking out for fear that they'll lose their jobs. And many of these women are supporting their families, single earners. I mean, it seems like there's a pattern where women in the trade union movement who are working for unions or have union positions, when they are harassed, they're concerned that they won't be protected and they'll be retaliated against. Is that what you found in both the CWA and now in the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO?
Yeah, I mean, I found that in the CWA, I found that in SEIU, I found that in UFCW when I covered a scandal there. A lot of people are scared of speaking out. These people, there's almost no one covering labor internally. Most of the labor journalists that are out there are in very financially precarious positions. A lot of them take book deals. A lot of them take speaking fees. A lot of them take ads or work at media outlets that take ads. At Payday Report, we don't take ads from anybody. We just are funded directly by rank and file workers. One time, a top labor leader even tried to send us $100. I politely sent back and said that I didn't want any more money from them, that if they wanted to show some solidarity when I was sick, they could send me a card. Randy Weingarten sent me $100 once. And so we just didn't want that to be a reoccurring thing. And, we're forthright about that. I mean, it was $100. We didn't return it, but we said no more. And so, I think it's really important. Labor leaders are elected leaders and they need to be held accountable like any other leaders. And too many of these people, and we're really getting into the era of influencers, where people want to be influencers on social media, and unions have vast social media networks. So a lot of people are getting to a point where, they just aren't, being forthright with their folks about what's occurring there.
And as a whistleblower and a journalist, a reporter, you yourself were retaliated against in the CWA for blowing the whistle on a sexual predator, the president of the Pittsburgh Guild. Why don't you talk about that? Because if journalists cover this and then they are retaliated against even by their own union, and that's what you're saying happened, what does that mean about independent labor journalists?
I think it means that we're under attack. I think when a union, what happened in my case was I received what were essentially death threats when I revealed that Michael Fuoco, who is the president of the Pittsburgh NewsGuild, was a sexual predator, that he had, sexually assaulted women, that he beat up women, that he had raped women. When I revealed this, I received a very hostile blowback from his protege, a man by the name of Zach Tanner, who's now the unit chair at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Tanner did a several-month campaign against me that's still ongoing. At one point, he sent me what were essentially death threats detailing in graphic details how he wished I would die and mocking me for being autistic and talking about my family. Now, the guy was very clever because he never came out and straight said, hey, I'm going to kill you. This is just the very graphic ways I wish you would die. But when you put it into the context of the guy's behavior, the reason we found out that he had sent us these threats was 3.5 months prior. He had tried to register several accounts and websites in my name. When on the very day that I notified him that I was investigating his mentor, Michael Fuoco's behavior and sexual misconduct, he went and registered websites and email addresses in my name in an attempt to impersonate me. Then later, he sent me these threats in October. Then in that September, Tanner had encountered me at a rally, and he walked directly into me, which was a pretty jerk thing to do, walking into someone like that. And I said, hey, you're walking into me. And okay, all right, you do that once. But then he came back around and he shoved me. And this was captured on tape. And then he came and he hit me from behind, and you can see on tape where I go, ow, and I'm clearly shaking. And then later, him and his buddies pushed me into a circle and shoved me around and forced me to flee, to the point you can see me on tape calling for a police officer. And when you get an email 3 weeks later describing how you graphically should be killed by someone who's gotten physical with you, that is a death threat, in my opinion. And it certainly scared my family, especially when we found out that this guy Tanner, that his father was a coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates and that his grandfather was the manager who won a World Series there. And we later found out that using whatever connections Tanner had, that he'd gotten a plea deal from a drunken fight that he got in with a taxi driver. So this guy Tanner, it was very scary to me. And for months, I began to complain about it and demand that action be taken, since he was a union officer. He's now the unit chair of the local here. And for months, the CWA, the NewsGuild ignored me. They refused to investigate. And then at one point, they actually spread rumors that I was a sexual harasser. And even though there was no evidence, and I've requested an independent investigation into what goes on, and they don't want to do it because any independent investigation would show that all these stories told about me were complete lies, and that the NewsGuild did cover it up. So they don't want to call for one or anything like that. And it's a big problem. It sends a very scary signal. It was very scary for me. And so we're suing. It's been 2 years of fighting them, and we're finally getting to the point that we're going to go to court, which I'm very excited about. They've spent tens of thousands of dollars. They've brought in specialized union corruption attorneys from Philadelphia. And to give people a little context, we're here in Pittsburgh. Philadelphia is more than a 5-hour drive from here. That would be like being in San Francisco and bringing in attorneys from LA. That's very expensive. And so, they've done everything to cover this up. And, for Rick Smith and Sara Nelson to not also call for an independent investigation. Look, I get they might not know the other side of the story, so why not just have an independent third-party investigation like the AFL-CIO is doing? I think it's somewhat hypocritical. Nelson's been aware for this a while. Smith has been aware of this over a while. And for both of these people now to make issues with their political enemies in the AFL-CIO and to use this as a political football, I think is very problematic and troublesome for labor reporting.
And when you were raising these issues of the head of the guild there doing this, who did you inform about this?
I talked to CWA Secretary Treasurer Sara Steffins, who has the authority to investigate. She refused to investigate because I had no grounds to file charges against someone in a different local than my own. So it's a big problem. And it's very hypocritical and it's very scary. I mean, when someone gets physical with you and you find out they've been going around impersonating you online and then sending you emails talking about your family and how they wish you would die, that's a very scary situation. I mean, I see that unit chair out at bars occasionally. I saw him in the last week. I saw him out at a party and he was shit-faced drunk. And so it's very scary.
And the fact that this Tanner has got a position now in the guild in Pittsburgh, despite the fact that you have evidence that the guy has threatened you physically, you have email. What does that say about oversight and about taking responsibility for the actions of people who were involved in covering up a sexual predator in Pittsburgh?
I think it says a lot. I think it shows that these people don't have the interest of union members at heart. They have their own political interest at heart, because union members deserve to have unions that are free of this type of violent intimidation.
So what do you think people should do, Mike? You're telling WorkWeek this story and you want it to get out. What's the course that labor activists, members of unions should do when they face these issues where there's a cover up around somebody being sexually harassed?
I think the most important thing is to go public. They can come to us at paydayreport.com. My email is MELK, Mike Elk, just the M and Elk, at paydayreport.com. I'll come to you. I'll come to people that are honest labor reporters that really care about getting out the story, and give to independent media like ours. Give to Payday Report. People go to paydayreport.com/donate, and also get on social media and call out these labor leaders, organize against them, demand that we have true union democracy in our unions.
Okay, well, I think that's a good way to go. We need union democracy. If we call for democracy in our elections in the United States, we should certainly have democracy in our unions. And that
certainly democracy depends on independent labor journalism.
And that may be coming up at the AFL-CIO convention, because I know the Vermont AFL-CIO has made a resolution that there be democracy, direct election of the international president of the AFL-CIO by the rank and file. So this issue of democracy, democratic structure, I think, is not just in CWA, it's not just in the SEIU and the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. I think it's within the entire labor movement. So I want to thank you for joining us on WorkWeek, Mike.
All right, thanks.